Hello, MBE project. Hi, Yolanda.
Hi, Tiffy.
How are we doing today?
We're doing great. I'm having seaweed, and you know how that goes.
Yeah, I know. I know.
It always makes me happy inside.
Made me a little jealous actually because I ran out and I didn't really like seaweed all that much. But then I have to eat it because it has a mineral that I need for my thyroid and so I got addicted to it now. And now I'm out. So now I'm fiending.
Well, did I tell you how I even got on the seaweed kick?
No,
Which I probably
actually.
shouldn't say publicly, but
Oh.
whatever. Mind Body Energy Project. Hey. Um, I was literally one day I was sitting on the bed and I wasn't channeling, like I wasn't meditating anything. I wasn't doing anything. And just like out of nowhere, like I whispered, like red algae. And I was like, wait, what did I just say? Red algae. And I was like, is that even a thing? So I Googled red algae, and what came up was nori, like the nori seaweed paper,
hmm
and blah, 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 blah. And so I'm like, why did that just come out of my mouth? So then I thought, well, so I looked at the health benefits of the seaweed, and I was like, oh, this might actually be good for me
Mm.
because of my thalassemia and like
Yeah.
red blood cells and, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I went and bought it, and I fell in love with it. And now it's my snack of choice.
So is the seaweed actually red algae?
So the nori, yeah. So it's not, even though it's called that, it's not technically red, but yeah. So a lot
Ah,
of like the
okay.
nori paper, like the way we see it, like the dried,
Yeah.
whatever, it's made from red algae, some of it
Oh,
anyway.
interesting.
Although my mom sent me a message the other day, some article that said a lot of seaweed is actually like dried cabbage or mixed in there or something like a filler. I don't know.
Oh, it's so sad.
She was trying to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Mom's always trying to hurt our feelings.
always trying to hurt her feelings. So how are you today, Sunshine? You look lovely.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but I appreciate that because I
Well,
feel all over the effing place.
the last couple of weeks, I think we did both kind of have, you know, some
Yow.
rebalancing going on. But
That's a
today,
really nice way of putting it.
but I mean, look, it looks like you're coming
Oh,
out on the other side.
thanks. I just did two photo shoots. One was super short, one was a little bit longer, and I really love doing those things. They were yoga centric, so
Ooh.
yeah.
Will
It
you
was
be able to share one with us?
uh I don't know because I don't know if I have rights to it.
Or maybe the site link?
The site, so Saffron and Sage is a healing collective in San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
and we were shooting at the Broadstone apartment downtown because there'll
That
be
sounds
things happening there. Yeah, so
very, very cool.
you could follow Saffron and Sage on Instagram and potentially see pictures that they're posting, but also see what's going on in that community.
Honey, I can't
Yeah,
wait to see what you're going to be doing in that community.
me too.
Want everybody going like Tiffy's photo. Show Tiffy some love whenever
Yeah,
it's posted.
yeah.
So, can we talk about just this acknowledgement that I just had of you, right? I mean, like we
hmm
both had some interesting shifts going on. And oddly enough, we were talking about joy, then we moved on to talk about creativity. But in the midst of all of this, those of you, especially the MBE insiders, you guys have access to our monthly energy updates. We talked about the significance of this current retrograde and also, transitioning this new seasonal energy. And man, I am not one to be like, oh, yes, I totally feel the retrograde, but I have been feeling this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I deny it. I deny Mercury retrograde, but it's been undeniable this time around.
Mhm.
Undeniable.
Yeah. And the thing is that this is interesting. I think it speaks to like that universal connection, right? Because so many people in the last few weeks have been like losing their stuff. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like I am confused, I'm tired, I'm pissed, I'm emotional. Like,
Ping pong in a concrete room.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, in honor of this all, and it's funny actually, the day that this posts, which is tomorrow, we're recording early for you guys. Today is what? The 25th?
Tuesday the 26th.
The 26th. So tomorrow when we post this is the 27th, and then 2 days later Mercury goes direct, or on the 28th actually, on Thursday Mercury goes direct. So we'll be coming out of the retrograde, but even while it stations direct, we're still, you know, going to be feeling the effects of even the transition out of that. So I think us talking today about the ebbs and flows of our practice is perfect, because there's been a lot of transitional energy this month alone.
Sure enough.
Honey.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, first of all, when you started in all of this work, like not just the physical, not just the personal training aspect, but when you started doing the work of like connecting with yourself and, you know, whatever we put under the spirituality bubble, did you have, like, what was it like for you at first? Was it exciting? Was it like high? Or did you already know about the ebbs and flows and what goes on?
That's a really great question, because I haven't actually like sat back and took it into full consideration. But it feels like spirituality has always been my practice, because to some degree I've always been very enthralled with like religions is obviously a gateway into spirituality. You start to learn about spirit and all this stuff. And I was bouncing around from, like, I was raised Catholic, and then I would bounce around from different religions and different churches and just trying to find a place to fit in. And I never did. I never felt like I fit in anywhere, but I was always on this search. And then I would dive into like ancient texts about different, like the Vedas and like all these other different types of religions. And then, you know, I found my way to yoga and the whole thing. Meanwhile, mirroring that journey, I was also on the journey of like self-improvement. And I didn't realize that I didn't realize those two paths were going to converge. So I just had this fascination with spirituality and religions and just like human behavior. But then I also had this like, oh, things feel bad. How do I be a better person? And I know I'm the only one that can do that. So it, like, I'd go in the self-improvement aisle at Barnes and Nobles. For anybody young enough listening, there used to be actual bookstores that you could walk into. They had titles on the aisles. Now we go to Amazon. I tried to buy a book the other day, and I don't have Amazon.
Do kids know about the Dewey Decimal System? I mean, that's going on a tangent, but you know. Anyway, sorry about that. Okay, so I just had an idea.
Yeah, so like bookstore, I'd always go in the self-improvement aisle. Like I'd always be in self-help, self-improvement. And I mean, part of that may have been because I had this idea that I was broken, you know, like just things that I grew up with and the way I felt as like a child into teenage into young adulthood. I was just like, I'm broken. I need to fix it. How do I fix it? How do I fix it? And so there was always just that feeling of not feeling good enough, or understanding like why things didn't feel good all the time, or like how watching somebody else and being like, how do they have it all together? Like, how do they have it figured out? Why are they so much cooler than I am? Why are they like, you know, living life so free spirited? But it wasn't until I really got into Reiki, because yoga helped me with my physical practice. Meditation helped me with my anxiety. I get into Reiki, and now I'm seeing the mirror. Now it's like, oh, all that stuff you're working on is you. So that's where it really turned for me, that it was like everything that I'm working through, like the dark night of the soul, things that are feeling bad, it's all of my own doing. So Reiki is what really showed me that this is all about me. I'm creating this. I'm the one that's going to change it should I choose to.
Yeah.
And so like the ups and downs that come with that, which is like, you start to realize that you're the one that's creating all this shit in disharmony. And then you have to take responsibility. So of course you're going to start ping-ponging off that concrete wall, because it's like, oh shit, like, why do I keep doing this to myself?
That is so funny. It's interesting hearing you say that, because it makes me think too, like I had a similar fascination or curiosity where like my mom is not religious, and she was just like, you know, explore and figure out what you like on your own. Whereas my grandma was super religious, and when I was little, and if she was babysitting me, like I had to go to church with her. But because my mom didn't you know, have any rules or regulations around like what I believed or this type of thing. I was like, you know, was able to explore the curiosity of everyone's religion. So, you know, I grew up in Massachusetts, and a lot of my friends were Catholic, and they all had their first communions and all of this catechism and all this stuff, which I thought was fascinating. Like what is this stuff? So I had experiences of going to, like, you know, churches with them and different things that they did. And then at one point I had a babysitter who, they were Chinese, although the daughter we were the same age. So she was like one of my best friends. And they had an altar that had, you know, like, you know, incense and Buddha things and all of, you know, whatever. So, and then just all of this different exposure, like, you know, friends who were Muslim, friends who were Baptists, just across the board. But I was always curious about what people believed. So the difference between you and I think, was my curiosity wasn't to help myself. I was just genuinely curious about what people believed and why. Like, that's it. Like, I just wanted to know, like, hey, what do you believe? How come? But I've also always felt very much like a hermit that was forced to be engaged with other people, because I was always very observant of myself and always very observant of people, even without engaging and not wanting to engage. But I think the turn for me too was also Reiki, in that I started to see from a different lens. So instead of observing like at this lower level, I started to observe from like a higher lens and really taking accountability for the part I was playing in the exchanges and the engagements in every aspect of my life. But fortunately, I didn't know anything about really this whole spirituality realm. So I didn't have any expectation of it was supposed to be sunshine and rainbows until I got in it and heard people talking about it. And it did feel like that at first, which did end up taking a turn. But yeah, I didn't have any expectation really. I just kind of was.
I think it was kind of normal for me to feel like the dark night of the soul and the stuff that happens, like once you start breaking in, came from a Catholic upbringing. So like there's a lot of doom and gloom in that. You know, I say that I'm a recovering Catholic because it's like I'm still trying to shake off the guilt that was like instilled in me.
Yeah.
You know, so gosh, I'll never forget the Stations of the Cross. We had to go to church during Lent every Friday and do the Stations of the Cross. So the Stations of the Cross are Jesus's stages to crucifixion. So literally like walking with Jesus through every step leading up to him being hung on the cross, taken down, and rising. I mean, to the point where I remember as a child, they were talking about how like he had the linens on his body that were like, they became like encrusted in his wounds that dried, and they would rip it off and rip the wounds back open. I mean, you want to talk about an empath, a little baby child empath sitting in a church hearing this. I was like, I did this to you.
That's what I was going to say. Was that traumatizing? Like,
yes! Did you hear me telling this story? I'm almost in my 4th decade of life, and I should not have to be like reliving these things, but I am. Yes.
That is so funny.
Traumatizing. So I think I had already like was prefaced with the fact that like, yeah, the spirituality path, it's seemingly a little bit fucked up because it's not going to feel all sunshine and rainbowy.
Well, you know, I was skeptical about all of it. So even before the spirituality aspect, the religious side, I heard a lot of contradiction in what people said they believed. You know what I mean? So like on one hand, I was like, God is all love and all forgiving, but ooh, God is going to get you. He's going to punish you if you're bad. And I was like, wait, what? Which one is it? Is he all forgiving and all loving, or is he going to like F me up? Like which
send a thunderbolt.
Yeah. So I always, and that again was what fueled my curiosity. And I think from a very early age, I realized like, I don't think anybody's right, and I don't think necessarily anybody's wrong. I just was very aware that everyone had a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's really interesting what people believe, what they choose to believe, and why. and even, you know, fascinated with the idea that some people just claimed to believe something because it's what they were born into, but they never questioned it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Another story, another day, right?
Right.
But once I got into Reiki, again, curiosity was what fueled me up front. Like, oh, the experience of, you know, energy work and seeing myself in new ways and all of this, it was so fun. And then when like old emotion and being even more sensitive to energy, all of that started to make itself very apparent. Whew, honey, I was like, where's the sunshine and rainbows, they said. I don't even know. So my first experiences with the ebb and flow of this, they were very extreme. It was like either extremely high and enjoying the experience or extremely low and feeling like, is the universe trying to kill me?
Yeah.
It was really drastic. There was no middle ground. And it was a really rough stage.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't stay that way. But what about you when you first started having like that mirror turn in? What was that like?
I feel like that happened secondary to like my sensitivity being more open. So my sensitivity, my intuition, kind of like they've always been there, but I think like through this work I started to accept it more.
Yes.
So then it was like the floodgates opened, and then I was seeing everybody else's shit. I mean, I've always seen my own, but I was starting to see everybody else's shit. And so then as a healer, like naturally went into like, oh, let me help you. And like, I got met with a lot of resistance. So that was a big ebb for me also when, as a healer, so to speak, getting that thrown back. I was like, I'm here to do good work and help you. But it was like, no, bitch, stay away. Like, do not look into my soul. Do not tell me my shit. Stop mirroring me. Like, no. And it was really, really hard because it shifted a lot of friendships. And just walking into a room and like being able to like see and feel people's pain sucked. And it still does when I do, but at least I've learned how to handle it better. And because I can see people differently now, and because I see myself, like I can handle all of it better than I was then.
Well, don't tell the secret yet, because I want us to like highlight the ebb before we get to our flow, right?
Okay. So I don't even know what the secret is.
No. I mean, like how you manage it better now.
Oh.
But it's funny that you say that, because again, very similar experience, but we're like night and day, which is why I think this makes it like fun.
Yin and yang,
like totally. So I, on the other hand, because I was very sensitive energetically anyway before, and that's what made me very, you know, more introverted. But once I started doing this work, it did intensify, and it made me where I didn't feel like I was introverted. It was more like a conscious choice where I didn't want to be around people. And so I did hermit at the beginning of this. I was just kind of like, no, thank you. I didn't want to help anybody. It was really like, I felt, my friend, Ethel, who, you know, she would joke with me all the time. And she's like, I feel like you're like an alien coming to study humankind. And I was like, that's what I feel like.
I feel like that too.
No, totally. Like I would just observe people and I would see their stuff, you know, intuitively feel it energetically. And it was fascinating, but I didn't want to talk to them about it. I was just like, wow, this is interesting. Okay, let me go back into my bubble because this is a bit much. So yeah, for me, the experience was very, I did kind of disconnect from everyone and everything in a lot of ways. There were very few people that I did still communicate with, you know, but there was a period where I went underground and
you're a dark 30.
yes
Yeah, same. I had to. I thought I was losing my mind. I still do sometimes. I know I still do sometimes feel like I'm losing my mind, but at least I have a better handle on it.
It reminds me of have you ever seen a show or a movie or something where someone is shape-shifting and like their head will like shake back and forth really fast and then their face changes? Like that's what it's kind of like, right? Because it's like you become aware in a new way of this other aspect of yourself that may have been suppressed. And then it's like,
that's a really interesting visual. I'm still trying to plug it in. Can you just use Arnold Schwarzenegger somehow, please?
Oh, I can't even. I don't know, ma'am. But that was a really good analogy once I got it. No, it's kind of like what we talked about several episodes ago, like the ego versus the higher self.
Yeah.
Right? And so you start to come into awareness of this higher aspect of yourself that sees from a different lens. But then there's that other part of you that you're very used to functioning from that's like, hey, what you trying to do? Like, I'm not changing. What are you doing? Like,
yeah.
So it's literally like this tug of war of you're trying to stop the shape shifting, but it's happening.
Yes.
So it's very,
yes, it is.
It's because very uncomfortable.
Once that shape knows that it's been acknowledged and it wants to get out, there's no way of it not getting out. There's no turning back.
I have two examples for people. Just these are the two things that came to mind. No. I mean shows. So on True Blood, there was a season on True Blood where there was a woman who was like, she worshipped like Dionysus or something, and she would vibrate really fast and she would shapeshift. And then just recently, I told you I've been watching the series Camelot, and the evil Queen Morgan, she shapeshifts. Anyway, if you need a reference, Google those.
I haven't seen either of those.
So anyway, when we go through these extremes, I mean, like these polar opposites of like feeling and being and experiencing, and you do get through it, okay? Like anybody who might be going through that right now, just know it's transitional, and as extreme as it feels, you will come to level out.
And I think that it's very important to highlight the fact that, yes, it does level out. I used to go through those things thinking that it was like permanent damage. You know, like if I stayed on this train, like it was just going to affect me, and it was going to like kind of mold and shape me to a manner, rather than thinking of it as just energy that was transitioning or moving.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, while it was so uncomfortable going through it, having in the back of my mind, there was something that always knew, even though no one told me, because, you know, all I heard was sunshine and rainbows. There was something in me that knew that that's exactly what it was. Like there was a part of me that like inherently knew I'm purging, and there's some part of me that's hanging on for dear life that's resisting whatever change is happening. And because I had that knowing in the background, it was like I had a goal. I had my eye on the prize of, you're going to shift to this shit. You are going to do it. Even if it feels like you are going to shift and you're going to let it happen. And even if it feels like crap right now, there was a part of me that always knew it's not going to stay this way. Like just go through whatever this is so we can get out on the other side. So I always had that in the background of knowing there was like light at the end of the tunnel, even if I couldn't see it.
Yeah. I like that idea of going through it. I mean, I know we always say that, like, you got to go through it to get through it. But I feel like oftentimes when we're faced with something, and this might not be everybody, it might be a lot of people, I don't know, is that instead of like going through it, we kind of like see it, we're like, oh, nope. And we take a hard turn to go somewhere else because we think like, either that's something I don't want to run up against, or it's something that's quote unquote negative. And if I have to deal with that, it's to take away my positivity. And so we take an about face and go in a different direction. Well, guess what? Like you're going to run into it somewhere else down the line because what you're running into is yourself.
Hello, honey, say it again. That is the truth.
What you're running into is yourself. And you may as well just fucking deal with yourself now. Because
we need that on a t-shirt.
That person's going to keep on showing up.
Honey, the truth.
Keep on showing up.
And that's one of the things that motivated me too, to not try to bypass whatever the challenge or the discomfort was, because there was a part of me that absolutely knew it'll show up in another circumstance, another form, another person, until I work through or face whatever this is, you know? So it was like, you know, whatever's triggering me now, I could avoid it, but it will reveal itself in another way down the road. And because I'm already feeling like crap going through this, let's just deal with it now so I don't have to deal with it later on, or at least with not as much intensity. So, okay, so we talked about like the extreme, let me tell you something. On my computer, because it's an Apple computer and my phone is an iPhone. So when people text me, it pops up on my screen while we're talking. Yeah. It's so distracting. And I don't know how to make it not do it.
Oh, yeah. Mine just rings. My messages don't go, but as it has interrupted the MBE project before, it rings and I don't know how to undo it either. But I don't have my messaging on there.
God, do we have any genius bar people? Okay.
Oh yeah, that's not me. I need to say something before we move on, because when you said bypassing, it made me think about like the difference between not bypassing and the idea of flow. So we always hear like, oh, it shouldn't be that hard. You should be like, things that are right just flow. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you have to get beyond that, like that thing that's blocking you or that limitation, and not bypass that in order to get to the correct flow.
Right. It's like the only way you can get to the flow, really. I mean, the truth is like you could go down another river that's not as rewarding and you could flow there, but if you're coming up against something that you're trying to get to that's really fulfilling. But I think it'll be just like what you said, that avoidance, it'll follow you. So even if you choose another path, and even if you go to a space that seems easier up front, you're going to run into that, that brick wall again.
Yeah.
At some point. So like the way we've shared with you right now is like the immediate experience of feeling like the ebbs and flow of our spiritual practices. But one of the things we both really wanted to share with you and talk about this is because we know that we have ebbs and flow, like the cycles are ongoing. And while they do get easier, they're not as extreme as you stay in your practice. We still hit these cycles of like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Talk to us last week and the week before that and the week before that.
Yeah. So
it's been a deal.
That's why we wanted to talk to you guys about this, because a lot of people do think that once they start a spiritual practice, it means that they're supposed to be able to navigate life so well that they have no problems, no challenges. And the truth is, yeah, we have stuff to work on. Listen, we have an endless list of stuff to work on within ourselves. Plus we have, the interactions with other people, all of these things. So we have an opportunity to continue to refine like how we deal with the ebbs and flows and like how we perceive things. So we wanted to make sure that no matter what's coming up for you right now, if you are in a state of transition, if you are faced with a challenge right now, don't beat yourself up. Don't think like, oh, I'm effing up my spiritual practice. Like this challenge is part of your spiritual practice, like how you choose to deal with it is like the spiritual jungle gym.
Yeah, the challenges enrich our experience because it gives us the opportunity to react to it differently, and when we react differently, we get a different response, either from other people, from ourselves, from the environment, the circumstance, whatever it is. And when you get different responses, it enriches your life more because you see things from a wider perspective and a more comprehensive perspective.
And I think the best thing too is to check for like the evidence for yourself, right? So on one hand, when you are in that space of like upset or challenge, and there's that higher knowing that knows like maybe there's a different way to deal with this than you want to, or different than you would have in the past, and you trust that higher guidance or that higher inclination, it's like, can you acknowledge that you are handling the challenge or stress or whatever it is differently than you would have in the past? Because the process of the work that we're doing is so subtle, and like how we shift and change is so subtle that it's not like you have these like alerts that are going to go off to tell you you've graduated that lesson. You know what I mean? Like, yay, high five, you get a cookie. Right. But where you will notice it is in your responsiveness. So you do start to recognize like, man, I would have handled that a lot differently 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
As you were earlier, I was thinking, like our challenges enrich our lives, and they open us up to new ways of seeing things and behaving, and our different behaviors open us up to other things as well. And it's like languages. You know, I speak English. I have a tiny bit of Spanish I'm capable of. Yolanda speaks Spanish and English. And the more languages we add,
I only speak Spanish if I've had some alcohol. Okay, at this point, it only.
yeah, but you were good at it at one point, right?
I was at one point.
Okay, so it's still in there. But what I'm getting at is like the more like languages you speak, it opens you up to a wider world, right? There's more people that you can speak to. There's more places you can travel more easily. So it's kind of the same thing when we deal with our challenges. It's like if we recognize a different language we can use when we're approaching the same challenge or a different challenge, it opens up the world to a wider perspective rather than taking the same action every single time and getting the same exact response. And then it shapes our experiences, which then shapes our thought processes and our character and our habits and all this other stuff.
There's two things with that. One, when you say that, it reminds me of too how in certain languages, like there is no translation in like English for it, right? So it even like broadens the vocabulary, broadens possibility, because we may not even have a word for what is spoken in another language.
That's a really great point.
But you also remind me of, oh crap, I think I forgot.
The Evil Witch in Camelot. You've already told me that.
Yes, well, her, yes. You are Morgan. I don't know. You go.
I don't know where you were going with this, and I wasn't preparing. I was taking a little mind break.
Oh, okay. Well, enjoy your mind break then. I was going to say, now I like totally spaced on everything you said. New language. I know. I got it. Okay. So you also reminded me of a way we can identify it is the things that we say we always do, or the things we say we always experience.
Yes.
People who say, I always choose the wrong guy, or
limiting.
I'm always late. I'm always whatever the heck. Listen.
Limiting with labels.
If you are a MBE insider, you want to go back in the archives and look at our spell casting that we talked about. Because that always and never is those are strong spells you're casting. But anyway, if you catch yourself saying that about anything in your life, that's where you can see like, oh, I have an opportunity to do that thing differently. So if I say, I always choose the wrong partner, well, maybe you should choose a different type just for fun, like just to see what happens. You know what I mean? Or like, I'm always late. Crap. Well, give yourself the challenge of being early for something, not on time, early, you know? So it's like the only way we can create new patterns for ourselves is when we acknowledge the ones that we're stuck in, and then we have to choose to do something to reconstruct that pattern. And I don't know how we got on that.
And baby steps to permanent progress.
Yes.
I don't know how we got on that.
I don't know, but I guess we got to bring it back to ebb and flow.
We're labeling ourselves and come on, mouth, work with me. Limiting ourselves with labels.
Yes. So, ebb and flow.
Right.
If you are in a space right now, if that's where we're started, we got to bring it back home, right? So, if you have been having challenges in this particular energy of transition, the Mercury retrograde, and listen, if you're listening to this late in the archives, this applies at any time in life. We all go through cycles of ebbs and flows, right? So whatever you may be going through that may be challenging or upsetting or whatever it may be, let's talk about being patient with yourself in the ebb and how we work back into the flow. So even with you, when you do find yourself in those tough cycles, is there something you find that works for you of how you navigate it?
Oh, well, meditation is always very grounding, which is necessary, because if I let my monkey mind run the show, it's a fucking circus. And it is the greatest show of a circus ever because it's nutso. So meditating and grounding is very important. And not getting swept up in the flow of the ebb, you know, right? So like when that tide is like dragging you out, like just try not to go with it, you know? Or maybe not resisting it, maybe. I guess just like you said, acknowledging the challenge. Like if we really acknowledge that it's actually just a challenge and how we're perceiving this challenge, versus it being a characteristic of our DNA. Like, oh, this always happens to me. Of course it's happening. Because when you say that, you go with it and you allow yourself to go with it. So yeah, it's always going to happen, and it's going to keep on happening because that's what you're saying is going to happen. So why wouldn't it?
Dang it. You just reminded me of, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but one of my Reiki teachers, he posted a meme yesterday that kind of said, you have a situation, and how you look at the situation is either going to create it or make it be an opportunity or a challenge. And the only difference is in how you see it. Now, that's not what the meme said, but that's what the gist was, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, here's a situation, and we tend to just default go to, oh, it's challenge. Well, because we don't like it, right? Yeah. We don't like discomfort.
It takes effort.
It takes effort.
And
we don't like discomfort. God knows a lot of times we don't like change. But what if that very thing you could say, like, I know there's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
Like, what does that even do? Like, does that shift the weight of it for you? Does it?
And that's where I've gotten at this point. There's been a lot of opportunity self-talk in the past few months, let me tell you. But yes, I have been approaching a lot of situations with, there's an opportunity to learn here. There's an opportunity to learn here, because the alternative is, I knew this was going to happen. It always happens, and rather than be right about this thing being consistent that I don't want to happen, if I see it as, oh, okay, this is an opportunity to learn from it and to change it or to understand, it turns everything around.
Yeah.
Because then I'm actively trying to understand what role I play in it. And if I don't like it, how do I switch it? Because it's only me.
And it's not easy. I want to point that out too. I'm glad you said that, Tiffy, because a lot of times when it's our first time making that effort to do it differently or to see differently or whatever, we are met with resistance from ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it can be hard and uncomfortable to even talk ourselves into seeing something differently, because the ego is going to fight you, right? Tooth and nail, right?
Yep.
And so it's like, also keep it in mind too, it isn't necessarily going to be easy the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 times you try to see something differently. But each time you do it, each time you try to perceive it from a higher lens, each time you try to make a decision from a higher lens, every time you're like slowly chipping away at that old pattern or that old point of view, to where you are moving more towards it becoming just your natural way of engagement, And you will have those moments where one day you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe, is this me? Like, I can't believe I'm not freaking out about this thing. I can't believe I'm handling this so well, but it does take our consistent effort, but you guys can do it.
Yeah.
Listen, if I could do it, you could do it.
Yeah, and we're designed for it.
Mm-hmm.
What I think sometimes society and cultural conditioning plays a role in making us think we're not designed for it, because we live in a culture that's creating everything into system reliance, right? So it disempowers us to some degree, and we forget how powerful we are, and we forget that we do have the responsibility to change things, but we've become a little bit instant gratification driven and system reliant. So we kind of like take our hands off the wheel.
Well, it's funny you say too, we are designed for it, but it's also like we do really crave it, because it's like, think of it this way, there is this higher aspect of you that just wants you to be at peace. It's already at peace. There's a higher part of you, believe it or not, that is chilling. It's like not stressed, not worried, not anything.
Yeah.
And it does take some work to access that aspect of us more consistently, but we can do it. And for that matter, it reminds me of even our lower nature. Some people say,
sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Some people say we get addicted.
Talking about.
Yeah, I know. We get addicted to our negative beliefs, or we get addicted to our old patterns or whatever, because it's familiar. Even if it's not serving us, it's familiar and whatever, right? But I think even our ego, even our lower nature wants to be happy and be at peace. It just doesn't know. It reminds me
of how to get there.
Little kids are exhausted and they will fight, scream, cry
Yeah,
just to stay awake, even though their little butts are tired. That's like your ego, right? Like, no, you need to go to bed. And it's like, hey, I'm awake. No, you really need to go to sleep.
Yeah. That's funny.
Did we make sense today?
I think so. I mean, I sure hope so.
Okay, so
is that it? We're done already?
No, but I just want to just make sure I understand like what we've covered. Like, so
right. Okay.
One, there is ebbs and flows in this practice in general. Two, sometimes it is challenging as hell, but there is opportunity in the challenge. Okay. And a lot of our discomfort, it's not always like something so drastic. Sometimes just decision making freaks us out. But again, like the decision is going to have to be made at some point. So either we can freak out about it or we can chill, sit back and make a decision. But, you know, also I wanted to touch on and ask you about what some call like the healing crisis, you know, because because there really is sometimes it's not just because we're stressed about a decision. It's not just because someone hurt our feelings. It's not just because, you know, some life experience. Sometimes the ebb is genuinely a result of this work that we're doing to heal ourselves. So do you even recognize that still, like you have these cycles of like healing crises?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How do you do that?
How do I get through it? Yeah. How do I navigate it? Well, I think everybody knows I call my mom a lot.
Oh yes. Still waiting for her number.
Yeah, right. So how do I navigate the healing crisis? After so many, I just recognize that it's par for the course to some degree. I want to define quickly what a healing crisis is, or at least give a metaphor just in case people don't fully understand it. If anybody...
Can I just say, the people that follow the show, thank you guys for following us and for loving us and being kind for all of our metaphors and analogies and tangents.
And still coming back.
We love you. Okay, go ahead.
But I feel like they were talking about language, right? I feel like the metaphors and visuals are a really good way of like applying the
I agree.
Tangible. And I love to use the human body as my metaphor because we all have one. Right? I mean, so if anybody
has an alien body, but whatever.
Yeah, I know I have alien something. I'll tell you that for sure. So the healing crisis, if anybody has ever done a detox of any sort, right? Yeah. So juice detox, fasting detox, all vegetable detox, whatever it is, you took yourself out of your normal cycle because you know that your normal cycle contains things that aren't good for you. You abstained from alcohol, like whatever it is. The healing crisis is your body recognizing that it doesn't have to have its defenses up for these things coming in anymore, like trying to process sugar, trying to process just the shit we put in it, right? So it realizes like these good things are coming in now or nothing's coming in. And it's like, all right, it's all hands on deck. And the body's like, all right, everybody, like you got the toxins in there, like get them, flush them back out into the system so we can get them moved out. So like there's literally toxins in your muscle tissue, your fascia, the fat, in your organs, and like everything's purging all of these. So it flushes it back into your system, into your bloodstream, into your intestines, wherever it goes. I don't even fully really know. Your lymphatic system, it pulls it out back into the open so that it can come back out. Now that shit got embedded in you somewhere because your body was like, oh, let's put this away for later. Well, we got to deal with it, but like I got other shit to do, like process all this other shit you keep putting in there. So when it doesn't have to process it and it wants to flush it out because it knows it's not good, it goes back into your system and it's like all of the toxins are flooding your system again. It feels like shit until it turns into shit and it comes out of you.
No, Sorry. It's good. No, that's such a good one because I was literally visualizing, you know, when you see on shows and things where people are detoxing, like whether from drugs or alcohol, and they are in pain.
Yeah, and withdrawal is gnarly.
And it's a crazy thing when you think about you're literally trying to rid what's bad and it feels like freaking hell.
Feels awful.
Yes, it feels awful. And people literally like...
And that's the discomfort because your body is going out of that cycle it was in for so long to try to reboot and
That
create
was
a better
like
cycle.
the best one you've given to date. That was the best one, because that is
Thank you.
exactly what it is like when you're going
Yeah.
through the healing crisis of like
Yeah.
working through your ego, working through your emotions. That's
Mhm.
exactly, honey,
Yeah.
that was the best one you've given
High five.
to date. High five up top, babe.
Thank you.
That
Thank
was
you.
a good one.
Yeah, so I like the toxins literally either a physical, emotional, mental, whatever, spiritually, whatever, they have to reflood your system in order to be pushed back out and purged.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll feel better.
Yeah, and it's so funny too. I mean, now looking back, hindsight, and all of you, maybe you can't do it in the moment if you're feeling not great in this very moment, but think of like when you are feeling more balanced, think of, it's interesting when the hindsight, right? When you think of like, man, I remember that felt like crap. Or I can remember the moments where, I mean, literally, I was like, am I dying here? Like, what, am I going to be stuck feeling like this? Like,
Yeah.
get this ick off. Like, just.
Yeah, there were times I thought it was going to be like the permanent existence. I was like, this is not. But it's not.
But it's not. And
It's
you
energy.
come out on the other side,
Yeah.
and you've made the decision, you've worked through the energy, you've changed your perspective, you've whatever it was, you've gotten through it to some degree at least, you know? I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, no, it may not be totally and entirely resolved. You might not have completely purified your system, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, listen, while we could be working on our Buddhahood, we got a lot to purify.
Amen.
We got
Amen
layers and layers of things to work through. So I think that was the thing for me too, was like coming to a point of just accepting this is part of the process, that the ebbs and flows are just part of the freaking human experience. And they're definitely part of our healing journey. Like, just accept that's what it is.
Yeah. And if you think about it too, we never remain the same. The only constant is change. And if we as individuals are experiencing new things and growing wiser, or like, you know, having a different exposure to something, there's always like these mini healing crises, because you learn something new and all of a sudden you have to purge that old idea and step into this new one. Like, you need to step up to and level up to what this new idea or circumstance or experience is. So like, we're always having these like little mini healing crises.
Yeah. And I like that you point out mini too, because I think a lot of times when we think of the ebbs and flows or like a healing crisis and these things, we think of drastic, like, oh, when it is the extreme polarity of feeling. But we do have them like, listen, I haven't heard, no, not really, but like often, you know what I mean? Like, it is kind of like, especially, listen, think of like even the lunar cycle, and we're all connected to universal energy, right? If you think of women alone and our connection to the lunar cycle, I always joke, I'm like, women have like one good week a month, tops. Okay.
Seriously.
We have, our hormones are like, whoa, just as part of our design.
Yeah.
You know? And unless you come into connection with you and like consciously work on harmonizing like your state of mind, your state of emotion, those things are. Yep. So my point is like, yeah, I mean, it's just, it is just like what you said. I mean, it's constant movement, constant ebbs and flows. But I think as we get better at participating in our ebbs and flows and step out of resistance, it's just the ebbs get a little smaller.
Right.
It's like, instead of like a tsunami, we start dealing with surfer waves, and then we maybe start to have like
a lap pool.
Yeah. Little tides, you know, before we get to the koi pond.
Yeah. Where all the dead masterhood exists.
The goal is the koi pond.
Yeah.
We can do it.
Nice. I know. Gosh.
We have to learn to surf first.
I know how to surf.
But, I mean, metaphorically surf.
I was just trying to convince myself that I can handle all of this.
Honey, we can. And I have to say, that's one of the things, and we gush and say how thankful we are all the time, but really, truly, And you guys have witnessed it. Like, we are very honest about the weeks where we feel like crap, when we are feeling challenged. And look at, I mean, you could go back just to 2 episodes ago and see we were looking raggedy.
Oh,
Like,
man.
we were struggling.
Woo!
And today we're alive. And so I just say that to say, like, if you are in a space right now that's tough, know that this too shall pass. Something is working through your system. Whatever you're shifting through, there is an opportunity for your growth. Maybe new windows are opening. Maybe, I mean, you know, it's just
as a reminder, like, we are not magicians. I mean, Yolanda is the energetic alchemist, but we all are.
Yes.
But don't be putting us on any pedestal saying like, oh yeah, you guys can do that because you're Reiki masters, or like you talk about this stuff.
Listen, I feel like if you've been listening to this
we're
podcast
just more honest.
at the beginning, you know that we are not.
Yeah.
Like, we are, honey, we tell you.
We're doing the best we can, and we're just sharing our shit with you. So
yes,
you can get through this also.
No, absolutely. And that's, I even have to say, I mean, honestly, with both of us, I think I could speak for Tiffany on this too.
Yes, you can.
That's why we love the work that we do.
Wait a second, that's not true. I'm just kidding.
I'm
just kidding.
No, but that's why we love the work that we do, is because we both have honestly like gone through the crap and the cycles and
continue to.
Yeah. And so we understand. And we also know how important it is, which is part of why we started the Mind Body Energy Project, to have community in this, to know you're not alone, to know you're not really losing your shit. It's just part of the process. Like, listen, we want you to know, no matter what you're going through, like, we're cheering for you. The universe is cheering for you. Your higher aspect of you is cheering for you. You got this. And you are working towards a more harmonious flow, even if it feels like crud right now.
Amen.
Honey, high five up top.
Yeah, wrap that.
You're like a choir singing. Yes, honey. We should have that on an episode.
Oh my God, that would be so great. Could you imagine the two of us like dancing
Baptist
in the
church
choir in our robes?
Honey, yes, honey.
Yes.
Let the spirit move through you.
Amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
High five up top. Did you know I found out that amen just means like so be it?
Yeah, I did know that.
I didn't
deep
know
in
that
the file somewhere. Deep in the file somewhere, but like
yeah.
I didn't know it until you just said it again.
I thought when people said so be it, it was a totally separate. I didn't know they meant this. You know what I mean? Anyway, fun facts. Don't say
it is a fun fact.
Anything.
Yeah.
Well, my love.
Yeah.
This has been an interesting conversation, and
it sure has.
The following week we will have our live event, and we will be in the month of April.
Holy smokes. Time and space don't exist, right? It's just a thing we've made up. At least time.
Yeah. So by the time you guys see this, look at rainbows, right? We have the retrograde is ending. We're finally going to be really adjusting to the new season. We're going to meet next week to all talk and hear what's been coming up for you, or what you just recently got through.
Yeah.
And for our MBE insiders, don't forget about our challenge.
That's right.
The
CCI? Yeah. Yes. Tiffany, I won't say it again.
Yeah.
I won't blow it.
Yeah. So we're excited to share with you the end results of our work too. So
yes.
Is that it for today, Tiffy?
That's it. Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.